Hello friends, I am the Anti-Terrorist. First of all, thank you for your comments and your emails, and for engaging in the conversation, and for asking questions. I really appreciate you rating these videos. The more people that see them, the more chance there is that the conversation can carry on and carry forward. So I appreciate that very much. Well, I've revisited a few things recently that I saw last year, just to catch up and remind myself of some of the information that I need to engage in these conversations. And one of the things that I revisited most recently was Who Killed John O'Neill? And I would highly recommend that you watch this short film. It won't take much of your time, but you will have a very steep learning curve in terms of getting information regarding the background to the events leading up to 9/11, the personalities involved and what links them. Whatever you think about the quality of the acting in it is really irrelevant. It's a moot point. It's the information that the film contains that I really recommend you take a look at. The conclusions made by this film had the same effect on me as it did the first time I watched it. My head was swimming. I was questioning my own sanity. I was questioning whether I wanted to actually engage in this conversation at all. It just seems too big sometimes to comprehend, and too big to make a dent in. Now, I know for a fact that some of you out there are having a lot of difficulty in dealing with this subject matter. And like myself, every now and then you'll sit there and think, am I going effing mad dealing with all this information? Is having all of this information in my head making me certifiable? Well, it's a very difficult situation we've got ourselves into. And we're talking about subject matter that could actually send you a little bit crazy if you weren't careful. And despite the fact I'm not an intellectual by any means, I acknowledge the fact that I have a certain amount of emotional intelligence, and I take comfort in a quote from Fromm. Allow me to show it to you.
Erich Fromm, in his Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, a book I wish everybody would read, the sick individual finds himself at home with all other similarly sick individuals. The whole culture is geared to this kind of pathology. The result is that the average individual does not experience the separateness and isolation the fully schizophrenic person feels. He feels at ease amongst those who suffer from the same deformation. In fact, it is the fully sane person who feels isolated in the insane society. And he may suffer so much from the incapacity to communicate that it is he who may become psychotic. And haven't we all experienced that? From the time we were born, I assume everyone in this room has experienced that. And I would also say this, that if you are sane enough to see the insanity, that's a damn good sign, because it means you're not insane. So as bad as it is to feel bad about the things that are happening, look at the bright side. You can see it.
Now, I'm not psychotic yet, but if I see any more bully boy cops tasering unarmed students who just simply care to ask a corrupt senator a few difficult questions, I might just flip out, and I won't be held responsible for my actions at that point, I can assure you. I'm joking, of course. Or am I? The incident I'm referring to can be found on YouTube, and a young student asking John Kerry a few difficult questions that he didn't like very much. And it's worth a watch because it'll make you angry, which is important right now. Because anger is a fear killer, and it's only by getting rid of the fear they're generating through all of this anti-terror legislation that we can motivate ourselves to do something about it and make a difference. Now, I need to make a point about the effects of trauma and pain and the brain's ability to forget it. And using images from 9/11, even the people jumping from the buildings, isn't enough to spark the thoughts that I need you to think about. Because we're a little bit complacent about those now, and they're a little bit long gone, and the brain doesn't relate to them in the same way as we used to, because we've been saturated by those pictures in the media. So I'm going to use a subject that's a little closer to home and show you a piece of video that may be a little upsetting for some of you. It may disturb you a little, but please bear with me so that I can make my point after you've seen it.
Chickens are probably the most abused animals on the face of the planet. They are crammed into filthy sheds by the tens of thousands, immersed in their own excrement among the corpses of other birds who died of heart attacks or stress. Some even die of starvation brought on by becoming crippled from growing so large, so fast that their legs can't withstand the weight, which makes them unable to reach food. After being genetically manipulated, and fed antibiotics to promote unnaturally rapid growth, their hearts, lungs, and legs often break down under the added weight. Heart attacks and crippling leg deformities are far too common. A PETA investigation found this farmer killing sick and injured turkeys by beating them with a metal rod and then tossing them aside, leaving them still conscious and suffering. This was deemed legal and standard by the industry. Between 5 and 11 hens are crammed into tiny wire cages during egg production. The animals might go insane from the oppressive conditions and attack one another, so their beaks, which are filled with nerve endings, are painfully seared off with a hot blade. Might go insane from the oppressive conditions and attack one another, so their beaks, which are filled with nerve endings, are painfully seared off with a hot blade. The USDA allows meat from animals with cancerous lesions and pus-filled wounds to be certified as USDA pure, so injuries and illnesses often go untreated. Pigs who aren't growing quickly enough, called fall-behinds, are killed by being slammed headfirst against the concrete floor. As you see here.
Again, apologies for showing you that. If you would like to see the full video, it's called Meet Your Meat and can be found on Google Video or YouTube. My point in showing you that is to give you a sense of how your mind works, having seen how those animals were treated in the intensive farming process. If you are a meat eater, one of two things would have happened there. It would have made you feel very uncomfortable, but you've decided you're a meat eater and you're aware of those aspects of intensive farming and you're aware of how those animals are treated. It may just simply make you think about the meat that you buy in the supermarket. Or alternatively, it may actually horrify you, as it did me. I went vegetarian for a year, but the diet didn't suit me. And so I decided that a rationalized compromise would be to eat organic meat only. And I would go to a butcher, my local butcher, and find out how the animals were treated, how the meat was killed, and so on. And I could therefore have what I wanted without contributing to what is essentially an insane situation where animals are being treated incredibly badly in order to meet a very high demand for cheap meat. Now, I'll bet you any money you like that if you were traumatized by those few minutes of video I showed you there at all, you'll be eating meat again within 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 2 to 3 months, whatever it is. There will be a time span where you're affected by it, and then all of a sudden you'll be able to rationalize it for yourself that you need meat, and that perhaps it wasn't that traumatic after all. And before long you'll be eating your pork steaks and your chicken breasts without too much of a care about it all. It's a little like pregnancy and childbirth. Any woman that's had more than one child will be able to tell you that it's the most painful experience. And yet, between 6 and 9 months after the childbirth, the first childbirth, the woman forgets the pain almost entirely and can only just about create a sense memory of it, just enough to know and remember that it was painful, but she cannot relive that painful experience to the degree where it will not allow her to have a second child. And so it's this ability of the brain to forget and to rationalize and to shut out painful and traumatic events that the elites are depending upon to be able to carry out their plan. They're relying on our desire to forget it because it's just too painful, too confusing, too infuriating, too maddening to keep in our heads. And so, without meaning to suggest that the debunkers are insane, I would put it to you that they're just trying to rationalize it, to forget the trauma, forget the pain in the only way they know how, which is to deny its connection to the New World Order, deny that it was an inside job, deny that there is any conspiracy, because it allows them to then move on with their lives and have some peace of mind again, and have the life that they used to have before 9/11 happened.